unifying idea between combining Elgar and Tchaikovsky was that both pieces have a very strong connection to the emotion of melancholy. And I think this is a feeling probably that we all can relate to, is that, you know, some things, or maybe a lot of things, were a lot better in the past. And certainly for Elgar, for his situation when he composed his famous cello concerto, he felt like he was a man from the past. He wrote the piece in 1919. The First World War had been over for a year. He also had a personal crisis. He had just come back from an operation. He had an inflamed tonsil, which for a 61-year-old was actually quite a dangerous operation at the time. And the legend says that when he woke up after the operation, he asked for a piece of paper and he wrote down the first theme of what would later become the theme of the cello concerto. It's almost a piece that, for me, reminds me very much of autumn. And it reminds me very much of the end of a cycle. Certainly was the end of Elgar's musical life. The cello concerto was probably, or most certainly, the last major work that he composed. So I think for Elgar, this was also a farewell to his own art. The world that Elgar is crying about in his concerto, the world that is lost, for me is very much represented in Tchaikovsky's music, and I think this is where the link is between the two pieces. Tchaikovsky wrote the Rococo Variations for one of his best friends, for Wilhelm Fitzenhagen, as the name indicates, a German cellist. And Wilhelm Fitzenhagen did something very unethical. He took the music, he took it on tour, which was great, but he didn't like the order of the variations. So he took a big pair of scissors and he basically rearranged the Rococo Variations to something that he preferred. And in that process, we lost half a variation, and also it seems to me that the variations never quite gelled as well. I wanted to go back and record the original version, the version that Tchaikovsky had in mind when he composed the piece. The charming thing about Tchaikovsky's Rococo Variations is that he pays homage to one of his favorite composers. He pays homage to Mozart. And Mozart, being from the Rococo time, was his big idol. And so just as Elgar is looking back on old Europe, on the 19th century, the century of Elgar, Tchaikovsky himself, who was very much a part of 19th century, is looking back on Mozart. I certainly feel the love that Tchaikovsky had for Mozart, and I also feel his melancholy that he's looking back, and if only he could be in touch with that master. So it was wonderful to work together with Andre and the brilliant Orchestre de la Suisse Romande, which had such versatility on this disc. It had the lightness and the flexibility for the Tchaikovsky, but at the same time was able to display perfectly the sadness, anger, and melancholy in the Elgar. So I felt incredibly honored to have these partners on this new album on Pentatone.